Thank you very much for joining us today for the Protective and Social Services Committee meeting held June 7th, 2022. We have a long list of items to go through. So with that, the members on this are, just hang on here. Mayor Clayton, myself, and wouldn't you know it, get kicked out of eScribe. This is why we love technology. Sorry about that. The members of this committee are Grant Berg, Mayor Clayton, okay. We have, this is a bummer, myself, Dylan Bressy, Chris Thiessen, and Mayor Clayton. I'll keep my comments till the end. We have no delegations except for we've got reports. And number one is 3.1, the Mobile Outreach Program. And we have Chelsea Frizzell.
Through the chair, thank you.
There you are. I was wondering where you took off to.
I'm here, hiding in the corner. Thank you very much. And before you is the Mobile Outreach Program Q1 report, and a few highlights include a public engagement session that we launched at the beginning of the first quarter. So this was a social campaign where we were able to provide information on the Mobile Outreach Program and our services. And it also provided an opportunity for community members to fill out a survey to give us some feedback on whether they were satisfied with our services that we provide or if there was any room for improvements. The Coordinated Community Response to Homelessness, MOP did participate in this roundtable. It did include other outreach services throughout the province. We discussed services that we provide and the experiences that we have as frontline workers, providing outreach services to our communities. And it also gave us an opportunity to highlight some of the really great work that's being done here in Grande Prairie. And we had discussions around some different resources and tools that we could use to ensure that our staff that are providing these services remain safe while out in community. Some projects and initiatives include recruitment. So we did recruit 3 new caseworkers to the Mobile Outreach Program Department. And their focus is assisting individuals to be, with the requirements to be eligible for Housing First services. So that includes ID, bank accounts, financial aid, and housing assessments, and then other supports as needed, such as mental health or addiction services. Also at the end of the first quarter there, we did some transition planning with our partnering agencies. A lot of contracts were coming to an end at the end of the third quarter, and new contracts were being awarded for April 1st. So we worked diligently with our partners to ensure that there was no gaps in services through this transition period. And we wanted to ensure that our clients were still receiving the supports as they were receiving new workers and going to be starting working with different agencies moving forward. As well as MOP did receive 3 years of grant funding from Alberta Health for needle mitigation activities. In the second quarter, we will be recruiting a designated position for needle mitigation. They will be responsible for needle collection, monitoring needle disposal bins throughout the community, as well as reporting on outcomes for those needle mitigation activities. Following that are our Q1 statistics, and I will leave the floor open for any questions. Thank you.
Great. I will ask anybody from committee. I got Councillor Bressie.
Great.
Bosch, after that, and Councillor Thiessen.
Great. Thanks for the report. Really appreciating the results we're seeing from MOP, and very interested to watch it evolve. I'm just trying to understand these caseworkers a little bit better. So you've got these MOP teams. If I call somebody's in distress or needs help, or I need help dealing with something, you've got these MOP teams that show up really quickly, and that's where I'm hearing a lot of positive things from our businesses and residents. Are the caseworkers part of that team that would show up right away, or are they people that the team would call and say, hey, you need to come down here and help with the client?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Absolutely. So our mobile outreach is the one that are doing the frontline response, and then they would refer out. So if the individual was interested in additional services opposed to that immediate intervention or immediate safety needs, then they would refer to the caseworker for more in-depth supports.
Great, thank you. And then I'm just kind of curious, why was the decision made to hire our own caseworkers and instead of continuing to fund and continuing to access the Northreach team, CMHA, just why are we doing this casework instead of referring to another agency?
Definitely. So thank you through the chair. We decided it was a really great opportunity with other contracts coming to an end to have that internal support for our outreach team. It just made things more consistent in supporting the clients and as well as keeping up to date on what their needs are and how to support them best. So we did take that on so that we could make sure we could do those internal referrals and provide the appropriate supports they need.
Great. And I know CSD is coming later, so this might be a question for them, not you, so feel free to defer it. But with transitioning from funding other programs to doing these internally, I can get why that can have efficiencies. Are there any gaps we left or anything that programs we formerly funded were doing that we're not doing? Or did we take over all the work that we were funding with these caseworkers?
We did take over the outreach services, so that would include the casework as well. But like I said earlier, we did do that transition planning to ensure that there was no gaps or barriers through that transition period.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chelsea, for coming. I am a huge advocate of what the mobile outreach program is. It's fabulous. I would like to see, every city adopt some program like this. I do have one concern, and it's the acronym to your program. I think it is contains a negative connotation to the clients who use it. I don't like it at all. I would like the P to change to a T as far as team, and take away that that image of how these people must feel when somebody's coming to help them, because truly that's what it is. Someone is coming to help them, not showcases what the acronym implies. So this maybe not be the forum to change it, but I do want to bring it out there because I think the public needs to know that was never the intention. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you. I think that's really great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. Yeah, I like top mop. Sounds like clean up in aisle 3. So, part of it is cleaning people up too. So, but yeah, the name change could be a bit more positive. Just a quick question, and then I got a more deeper question. So, on your Q1 calls, there's this huge bar of 720 from program users, but I noticed you got agency, business, city staff, community members. What's encompassed in the program users in that stat line?
Through the chair. So program users are individuals who are accessing services. So that could be them calling for assistance to appointments. It could be calling for referrals elsewhere. It could be just follow-up. So just calling us to see what we can do to support them through whatever they need.
Okay, that's great. That's good follow-up, just as stated in the report. So my other question is in regard to the new faces and relocations. So 22 new faces in the first quarter. Did any of those people, of course we're looking at privacy here, did any of them state, why they came to Grande Prairie and perhaps what services they're looking for in coming here, or maybe even where they came from? Because I know that we relocated, as it says here, 9. I'm not sure if it was those new faces to the community. But has anybody intimated why they've come into Grande Prairie? Is it just for services or opportunity?
Yeah, so we do hear lots of different reasons why people end up in Grande Prairie as a new face. So sometimes they'll just be coming through the community and get dropped off. Maybe there was something that happened along the way and this is where they landed. Or they have family here, which they've come to have someone to stay with, or they came here for service access. We've also heard individuals do come to Grande Prairie looking for work, and they end up living or experiencing homelessness in Grande Prairie.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. And as far as relocating people, has anybody taken issue with being moved out of Grande Prairie back to their home community where they have supports, family, and services there as well? Or
sorry, does anybody have any issues?
Yeah, did they have any issues like, oh, I don't want to go back to Edmonton. I don't want to go back to Prince George.
Right. Yeah, we do often hear that as well. Folks, I mean, they always make their decision and that's where they land, but we always do provide it as an option for them because we'd rather them not be in Grande Prairie experiencing homelessness with no support. We'd rather relocate them to their home communities where they have those natural support systems in place.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. And of those new faces, were any of them like correctional releases at all?
Yes, we do see that quite often as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I just got one question. It's the number of needles. 57 needles were safely disposed of. Can you give me in a short answer? Are they all throughout the city, or are they in certain locations?
Through the chair.
I got Miss Bosch.
Thank you, Chair. These 57 needles, is Northreach also collecting? Is there higher numbers in this, or is it solely the mobile outreach team collecting?
Through the chair. Yes, Northreach Society is also doing needle collection. Their contract did end as of March 31st, so the end of the first quarter there. So we will be taking on those main needle collection duties moving forward.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that excellent report. Some information there that is quite interesting and intriguing. So with that, we will move on. And we have the Coordinated Care Campus update. That's the same person. So, Wendy, would you like to do the director's report for Chris, who's not here today?
Thank you, through the chair. So I will keep the director's report quite brief. As you know, everyone's here in the room. For community social development, the second module for equity, diversity, and inclusion training is addressing racism and discrimination. 2 sessions have been held in the organization, with the next one scheduled for the end of June. The current focus on traffic safety and enforcement services is significantly on construction zones as this season ramps up with multiple roadway work underway. And in GPREP, let me see here, is connecting with select halls and facilities throughout the region to establish or confirm a letter of understanding if we need to use the facilities in the event of emergency disaster. This is part of the annual preparation activities. The fire department is currently conducting annual pump service tests on all trucks. This is a part of a preventative maintenance program. As well, dispatchers are currently training on the new 911 phone system in preparation for the new requirements under the 911 upgrade. The RCMP reports regular operations, while the mobile outreach will be involved in regular UTV patrols with the RCMP in the park system and trail systems throughout June. And that concludes my report. I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anybody from committee? John?
I just have one question. A while back, we had a delegation come speak to us about excessive noise of vehicles and those kinds of things, and then we got a follow-up letter here just recently. I think one of our commitments or directions was to have some kind of a subcommittee set up or a group to kind of look at options that could come forward to council. Just wondering if that's gotten any traction yet, or if there's plans to do that. If so, how does that unfold in your eyes?
Excellent. Thank you, through the chair. So administration is working with communications as well as a team consisting of RCMP and enforcement services to look at what we can do in the area. And we plan to host a community cafe so that we can hear from the residents in that area and come up with a plan moving forward.
What's the rough timeline for this cafe?
We're looking at the end of June.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bressie.
Great, that's good to hear. But just a comment about residents in the area. My recollection, and maybe it's wrong, but my recollection was that council was interested in noise community wide, and certainly for me, I hear a lot of conversation for residents on 68th, but it's certainly not the only place where I'm hearing about noise. And if we're gonna talk to the community about this, I would hope that it's open to the whole community and we're looking at a city perspective, not a one part of the city perspective.
Agreed. Yes. Ms. Blackmore.
Just following up on Councillor Bressie's concerns, I think that enforcement is aware of what areas of the community are notorious for noise violations. I don't know if violation is the right word, being as we can't seem to find a way to charge people, but is it your intention to have only one community cafe, or are you looking at establishing 2 or 3 in different areas of the city? I'm thinking that might be more appropriate given the nature of noise.
Thank you, through the chair. We can certainly look at that. I think we would like to begin with the area that was mentioned and then work our way through that first. So that's our plan moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? I see none. So I'm going to let you off the hook there. Now, turn the page and let's talk about the CCC, please.
Thank you, through the chair. So a lot has happened at the Coordinated Care Campus, but what administration would like to highlight at this time is the wonderful work and progression that we're seeing with the residents. As a significant part of the recovery-oriented system of care, residents and case managers work continuously on individual goal setting and wellness planning. Administration would like to provide a few examples of the resident successes, including detox completion, pain management courses, and individualized pain management planning that meets each individual's needs, as well as completing pre-employment training and mapping out paths to future employment. The Resident Council also hosted a neighborhood cleanup and barbecue. The cleanup was well attended with representatives from CSD, Chelsea Villas, and the city's director's office participating. So very well organized and well received. Renovations updates are as follows. The city has been working with key stakeholders to provide viable options to address building requirements and current needs. Considerations included budget and expedient timelines. As a result of combined efforts, adjustments in floor plans and timelines, we'll see the project develop in new phases to completion. Final design considerations such as energy efficiency, safety, accessibility, and operational functionality has been included. For the renovation, administration reports to be on schedule. The interior demolition is currently underway, and administration is reviewing the 100% drawings this week so that we can proceed with an official request for tender process for the general contractor early next week. With that, administration will also be able to provide a further refined budget and timeline. Timelines included in the report remain on target with tenant occupancy for November of 2022. And with that, I'm open for questions. Thank you.
I think you did a pretty good report. There's no questions. Of course there. Ms. Bosch,
Thank you.
please go ahead.
I'm curious, since this program started, initially you had a reduced number of calls to service. Has that increased or stayed the same or reduced?
Thank you through the chair. That's a very good question. So at first we had lower numbers for calls for service, none attributed to the actual coordinated care campus residents. In quarter one of 2022, we had a slight increase for calls for service. Typically, we see that in this time of year as we adjust to new environments as well, which lends to our combined recommendations that we must ensure that transition happens in November of 2022.
Okay, last call. No other questions. Thank you very much for your reports and filling in for Chris, and it's great. So we'll move on to the Community Social Development. Miss Angela Sutherland, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Just a few highlights from the report in front of you. In quarter one, the Youth Advisory Council, they organized a financial literacy 101 session in March, and which helps strengthen the financial skills of local youth. We had about 25 youth attend that online session, so that was quite exciting. As Ms. Hughes had mentioned, equity, diversity, inclusion is ramping up their racism and discrimination training modules and will be available to city staff as of quarter two. In terms of back in quarter one, Women of Influence Awards were held in March, and we had about 150 people attend that online event. So that was very, very good to see the online community come together to honor women in our community. I'm not sure if council is aware, but the City of Grande Prairie had received a grant through the Alberta Partnership Grant back in 2019, and CSD had led that grant, which evolved into a intermunicipal overdose collaborative. So that involves a group of municipalities that are trying to attempt a community of practice to address the opioid situations in each respective community. So it provides an opportunity for all of us together to work collectively through similar issues across the province. So that has been really, really beneficial in terms of planning and providing support to each other as municipal partners. Minister Bennett, the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, had attended a meeting there and provided a highlight in the potential of safe supply initiatives towards a community care model of harm reduction. So I thought that was really exciting. Ms. Frizzell from the Mobile Outreach had highlighted the fact that they have received an Alberta Health grant. CSD had applied for that one as Alberta Health was seeking out municipalities to take on that responsibility. So that's why the city decided to take on the grant, whereas it was originally from Northreach and transitioned over to the city. In terms of other highlights, I think that I will leave it there, and I'll be open to any questions.
All right, thank you so much for your report. Looking around, I do not see anybody. So thank you. You did a great job on the report. You satisfied council, so good.
Chair.
We'll move on to 3.5 enforcement services. And join us up at the table here, Mr. Ross Gear and Mike Lefebvre. Welcome.
Thank you.
And it's good to see you sitting at the mic, sir.
Thank you. For the report for enforcement services, to begin with, I'd like to introduce myself, Mike Lefebvre, with the City Enforcement. Presently, enforcement for the present quarter was part of the property agent program, which we signed up approximately 55 businesses. And we're looking at collaborating with the RCP as they are also part of the same program. So we're going to be looking at working together, moving that forward. With the unstable weather, enforcement work to stress the importance of maintaining clear, passable sidewalks. This specifically is important for the elderly and anyone that may have mobility issues. Members conducted many door knocks and issued notices. Some of the issues this year with the abandoned vehicles and vehicles which impacted snow removal. Operations was another concern for enforcement. Consideration was given this year because of the extreme cold weather. We had a few of those weeks, 40 below, 50 below. Consideration was given, broken down vehicles, people that couldn't start their vehicles. But once the weather subsided, enforcement were out there again issuing those notices. And we will be looking at working closely with transportation in the upcoming year to strategize for the next winter session. We've conducted some staffing actions this past quarter, including myself. We have a new bylaw enforcement officer. We have 3 peace officer level 1s, and we will be looking at advertising for 1 more peace officer level 1 in the near future. We have purchased 3 more bikes, recycled some of the old ones, and we're looking at getting our bike patrol unit up and running in the community again. And enforcement is also dedicating some time to parks with speed control as crews are out doing the cleanup on our highways and roads. We have conducted foot patrols, have resumed, and have received positive feedback from the Downtown Association. We do the morning patrols looking for issues with encampments, people loitering, and in the afternoon, we go out and conduct foot patrols in the downtown core. We will be looking at potentially expanding those foot patrols in some of the neighborhoods and dog parks as we're looking for spring annual licensing blitz. That's pretty much some of the highlights from enforcement. Looking forward for any questions.
Thank you. I've got a few people here in the queue, so Mr. Thiessen, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair O'Toole. Thanks for the report, gentlemen. It's good to see that things are going good. I guess my question is, in regards to things going good, the number of automated traffic enforcement tickets seems to have gone down drastically, 3,300 from between this quarter and last year's first quarter as well. Is that because we have less patrols, or are people just driving better?
No. Thank you very much. Through the chair, there has been some restrictions through the province in the way that the traffic control has to be conducted, which we believe has resulted as a decrease in those numbers, those statistics, and also I believe there are some staffing issues with Global that they're experiencing right now, and they're looking at filling those up. So those will account for some of those lower numbers, and I can give to Sergeant Gear. I believe he may have a little more insight from last year. So on.
Yes, through the chair, I would say probably the biggest decrease is the number of restrictions that the province has placed on automated traffic enforcement. It's quite substantial, and a lot of the zones that they could work before, they can no longer work. That includes intersections. It really has curtailed what they can do.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bosch.
Thank you. I don't see any data here on unsightly property or derelict, property, I guess. Is there any data on that? Is there any issues with that here in the city?
Through the chair, yes, there's ongoing investigations weekly, almost daily sometimes. Most of the unsightly properties are dealt with through conversation, just good conversation with citizens. The odd one goes a little further where we have to go into enforcement action. And it's fairly complicated because unsightly properties, you have to deal with it through the Municipal Government Act and the statutes under the MGA. And we have to follow the process very carefully. If we don't follow the process carefully, then unfortunately, if it does go to court, it's difficult. If you're talking about that, if you're talking about just encampments and stuff, encampments we deal with on a daily basis.
No, I'm actually talking more so about property owners and commercial properties.
Through the chair, yes. I don't have any raw data. It'd be within the bylaw stats that's considered. But I've been doing this for 6 years, so through my experience, I would say we have probably about 20 difficult properties every year, and that we have to go a little further. Only 3 that I can think of. 2 that I can think of where we've actually had to take them to court, to civil court. That that's at the end of the process. So usually through some substantial enforcement action, we can get their attention and get the property cleaned up.
Perfect. You did answer, and even though you didn't have the stats. Thank you.
So Bessie.
Great. Thanks for the presentation and welcome. It's good to have old/new face here.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm just, the provincial photo enforcement changes, I thought I tracked all of them, but you said something that was new to me. Did you say we can't do enforcement at intersections anymore?
Through the chair, it's not that we cannot do it anymore, but the restrictions or the circumstances have changed. There's quite a few restrictions as to what intersections can be used now. And we have to follow those restrictions very carefully for the province.
So I'm kind of curious. That's concerning to me. I'm thinking especially the old bypass Staples to Costco, or when we did our transportation master plan, we saw we were having an injury accident about once a month there over the 3-year study we did. And I know that you can't do traditional enforcement along that really dangerous corridor. How's that corridor for photo enforcement now? Are we able to photo enforce that corridor?
Through the chair, I would have to consult with Global and the RCMP. It is my understanding, now I hope I have this right, it's my understanding that in order for an intersection for Global to now, or sorry, photo enforcement to work an intersection, they have to show an increase in enforcement and collisions throughout 3 years. And whenever now with the new regulations, now whenever it drops, that intersection has to be taken off of the list, and which is somewhat frustrating because we know, well, at least I believe that the reason that some of these intersections are now safer is because of the work that enforcement has done there, like, you know, automated traffic enforcement. So with the new regulations, we could get you more on that, but it is quite substantial.
Just to follow up, there's a lot of construction going on there right now, so everybody's going real slow.
Yeah, right now. I'm wondering if you'd entertain a motion, Mr. Chair. Sure. I would move that committee direct administration to bring back a report outlining current enforcement and safety risks along the old bypass and other corridors that administration might have concerns about. And open to wordsmithing. I'm looking forward to seeing what the recording secretary captures, because I might want to wordsmith that myself. But just to speak to that, I've got a diagram for our transportation master plan in front of me, and what it showed when we did our traffic study there was we had 3 intersections along the old bypass where there was an injury accident happening about once a month, if I'm understanding this map right. And if there's concerns that we might not be able to enforce that adequately now, that really worries me about where we might go with injury stats in the next little while. So I'd like to get a better understanding of, can it be photo enforced right now, and are there traditional options? Because my understanding is it's not easy to traditionally enforce, but I don't really care if it's photo enforcement or traditional enforcement. I just don't want to see us go back to an injury accident a month at 3 different intersections on that corridor. So I'd like to get more information about that.
Can I get the recording secretary to just show us the motion?
Yeah, thank you. And the wording of this works for me. And just to be, just to explain, I said in the motion along other corridors that may be of concern. I just want to leave administration the ability, if you've got other corridors you're concerned about, I'd love to hear about that. But my intent there is, if that isn't the only corridor that is really concerning, that's fine, just reporting that. But that's why I included that, just give you a bit of wiggle room if there's other issues we should be aware of.
Thank you. Through the chair, we'll look at all high traffic corridors and certainly look at those corridors. Absolutely.
So I've got Councillor Blackmore. Are you getting it out? And John Laners and Mike O'Connor in the queue.
Can we see the motion again? I'm wondering if Councillor Bressie would like to include the word speed anywhere in that motion, as it doesn't seem to be addressed. And in addition to that, the other thing that I'm thinking about, particularly about the bypass, is the traffic volume has not changed, but the type of traffic on the bypass has changed significantly since the reconstruction or redevelopment of now the official bypass. So I'm thinking that that may have some, may change the situation somewhat as well. But I'll let you address the motion.
And Mr. Chair, I think that's a good catch. I'd be very open to that friendly amendment, if the chair will permit.
Councillor Laners?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that it's speed at an intersection that necessarily does it. It could be, not property stopping and those kinds of things. And I know that's always been a ticketing phenomena, that the not stopping at signs. But I think leaving it kind of general. We'll leave it up to them because they're the ones that are deciding what's important. One thing I would be curious about though, and we talk about I'll call the Ernie's Corner or whoever on the bypass. This is an example. You got 16,000 vehicle movements there per day. Times that by 30 is 500,000 turning movements a day or a month. What is a reasonable baseline? Because there's always some risk. So there must be some standards that say when you have so many traffic movements, it's anticipated that you will see in a relatively healthy and safe intersection, you will see an accident of one accident, injury accident per month or 10 per year. And I don't know what that baseline is because it's easy to say, oh, we've had an accident a month. But maybe the norm Canada-wide with our weather and all is 2 to 3, and we're actually only at 1. And maybe it's one of the safest intersections in Canada, but we don't get that baseline data. So I'd be curious to see what kind of information is out there, so that we can assess the merits of, do we have a problem or is it because we can never reduce the risk to zero, and so I think that I'd be curious to that information.
Thank you. Mr. Mike O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. I just want to bring up a safety concern that's happened because of the reconstruction of 84th. And what's happening is they're now driving through the neighborhoods at excessive speeds. And of course, traffic has increased. And we have a lot of young children in our neighborhood. And I'm not sure if that's affected in all the areas, but I just want to make sure that you're aware that it's, my wife called it Mario Space Racetrack. And so it's a lot of traffic, and I'm concerned about safety.
You'll have to get official recognition for signage if you want to put Mario's Racetrack up there. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, you're absolutely right. We have been responding to a lot of complaints in the area, 84th Street, and our officers have been documenting some very high speeds in that area. And it is a location that we attend on a regular basis.
That's great. Mr. Chris Thiessen.
Thank you, Chair Kevin O'Toole. Appreciate it. Just one quick question. Recently, I got to pretend to be a bylaw enforcement officer. I got a call from a concerned resident inside one of our construction zones. This is on the east side of town, around 92nd and 92nd. The complaint concern was the main one was that they couldn't get in and out without having to do their detours, which might lead to residential speeding and stuff like that. But there was a secondary concern that I was able to act on. That was in regards to where construction vehicles are parked on construction roads. And one of the trucks was parked literally in front of a stop sign, so most people couldn't do it. Now, luckily, the driver was around, and I was like, "Hey, I don't know if you're allowed to park by the stop sign." He was like, "Oh, I'm just moving it." So I was like, "Hey, I'm enforcement." But what does enforcement services do in regards to construction vehicles in the event that they may be blocking a traffic controls signal or sign in a construction zone?
Through the chair. Well, that would be on a case-by-case basis. You know, it's very good to bring this to our attention, but that has not been a concern that has been brought up too often that I've heard of. But yes, if any citizen has a concern about that, please let us know and we'll deal with it right away. You know, we realize that in order to get the job done, they have to have their vehicles handy, but at the same time, they have to keep them in a safe manner. Absolutely.
And that was the basic concern. This is the first time I ever heard it, so I just happened to live in the area, and I decided, well, I'm going home anyway, so I'll just take a swing by, and just perfect timing. But okay, thank you.
All right. Well, there is a motion on the floor, correct? And I don't see any other questions, concerns. And so with that, I call for the vote. Right. That passes 3-0. With that, thank you, gentlemen, for coming up, doing an excellent report and answering a lot of the questions that my fellow council members had. I'd like to move on to item 3.6, the fire department. Come on up, sir. Preben, it's nice to have you back in front of the microphone in live. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously you have had the report submitted to you, so I'll just highlight a couple items in here. We have started on developing the standard of cover policy, which was a recommendation in the fire service review we conducted back in 2020. We are currently conducting a risk assessment of the risks in our city and assigning them a value for in order to prioritize them for further evaluation. This is a big job, but I think it'll become a very important document to guide us in the level of service provided by the fire department. It is our intent to bring this forward once we have it completed and hopefully replace policy 803 with this new document. This new document will look at the risks in the community, look at the resources available, and kind of look at the applicable standards for fire protection and kind of put that all together in one document. Currently 803 basically lists some standards and does not really look at the risks in the community. The mutual aid agreement with the county is getting very close to implementation. We're currently working out the response details, and it is anticipated that the agreement will be operational and fully implemented within the next 60 to 90 days. Work continues on the technology upgrade in our dispatch center. This will ensure our center is fully compliant with the next generation 911 and ensures that we are ready for the future. These upgrades must be in place by 2025 in order to comply with the next generation 911. And just in the stats, you will now see there are some stats included on fire prevention activities. And I must correct an error in these stats. In some of the far right column in the graphs, there's year 2022, which should all read 2020. So there's, I think, 3 places in there that I'd like to point out that for 2022 in there. So, okay. And to that end, I'm open for any questions.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you very much, Chair O'Toole. Thanks for this report, Chief Boston. Really appreciated it. First off, just a comment. 2 of my favorite things that the firefighters do is 1, they save lives, and 2, they make the community better. And so I really appreciate you putting in the Grande Prairie Firefighters Foundation's like community work, knowing that all that hard work and time put in is going to great causes. So my gratitude to the members of that committee and to the fire department in general for that. My question actually is in regards to your Partners in Protection meeting that you have annually. We're getting into fire season. There's a couple wildfires that are brewing up in the north here. So I guess my question is does the fire department have a dedicated member to work inside the city of Grande Prairie on forest fire management, or I guess forest management, to ensure that if a fire were to blow in through our Central Lake River Valley corridor, that we would know how to deal with that, for one, or two, how to prevent it through cleanup and maybe liaisoning with our Parks Department. Do you do any of that work or have any dedicated members to that effect?
Thank you, and through the chair. So we do work with parks, and we did have a grant a few years ago that covered the cost of developing a plan to look at our kind of urban wildland interface in the city. The area most of concern for us is kind of the south end of the city along the Bear Creek corridor. So we did some assessments in there and kind of evaluated the risk and mitigated some of those risks. In addition, we have an agreement with the county. Should there be a wildland fire in the county or the city and it sort of encroaches on the neighboring community, we will notify each other and kind of stand each other up so we are aware. And we also work very closely with forestry and monitor kind of their updates on the risk in the area, and as well if there are any fires in the green forest area, we are aware of those. So we work very closely together and keep each other well informed.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Thank you very much, Chief Bosson.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions? I see none. So thank you very much for that report. And there's some good, interesting statistics in here as well. So, all right. Ms. Jennifer Wood, would you like to come up and report 3.7 GPREP? There we are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unlike Top Gun, we do not have any flying planes that are going to do any acrobatic scenarios, but we do have a trailer now that allows us to set up an emergency coordination center in any building.
Cool.
So through the chair, you have your have our report in front of you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Everybody seems to be good. All right. Well, that's the shortest anybody's ever sat in that chair. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we do have one question. Ms. Bosch.
Thank you, Chair. This new trailer that you have, how many people can it assist? Like, do you have a number, like 50 people an hour, 300 people an hour?
Through the chair, this trailer will allow us to help support the incident site. So it would allow us to have 20 plus people working to support the site, and that may include anything from getting food and supplies for the site. This isn't directed specifically for dealing with evacuees, although it might help support with making evacuation happen, or making sure we get processes in place to support evacuees.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much once again. And we will move on to 3.8 Q1 report, RCMP, Mr. Peter King.
Good day.
Good day. Good to see you, sir.
You as well. Thank you. Through the chair, you have my report in front of you, but I'd like to draw a little bit of highlights from key points. In our Q4, which is your Q1, we had 5,303 calls for service. We had 14 stakeholder engagements, 70 curfew checks completed. We had a 2% decrease in person crime, 41% increase in property crime, and a 20% increase in total criminal code investigations. And we're currently managing 21 hard and soft vacancies within the detachment. That is the nuts and bolts of the report. And anybody questions?
No. Mr. John Lehners, Councillor, sir, please.
Yeah. Just curious, is it weather? Why the 40% increase in property crimes?
Through the chair, I'm glad you asked, because that is a noticeable increase in fraud-related investigations. We had a very noticeable increase in fraud within the first quarter, our last quarter, and we did a proactive media engagement with the citizens and encouraged them to report fraud. So in addition to the actual fraud itself, we believe that our proactive engagement with the community induced a lot more people calling in and reporting them. Reporting being victimization of fraud. So we believe that's the noticeable increase in the fraud related. It's a 250% increase in fraud alone in that quarter.
When it's fraud, is it phone fraud or is it knock-on-door fraud?
We categorize, we kind of lump fraud all together into one big happy family, and it's all included. Phone, computer, doors, anything in person, it's all lumped together in the stats.
Thank you.
I got to admit, I've been, I don't know how you call it, computer fraud a few times. My account's got, so I'm really scared about opening up emails that I don't normally see. And I know the city's got some processes that we have to take training, but still I got busted a couple times. So is it most of this is in North America or does it come from overseas? And is there anything that we can do once it leaves the North American soil?
Through the chair, I think, for me to allocate the origin of the frauds is going to be hard. A lot of the way we investigate it is to determine the likelihood of prosecution or the likelihood of conviction. So we do an immediate risk assessment, and then we assess, okay, if we put, are we going to get our bang for our buck out of the investigation? If our preliminary investigation reveals that it's gone through a lot of VPNs, through the internet, that's going to be a very labor intensive with a low probability of conviction and or a low probability of restitution for the victim. So we need to make an assessment. We work with the complainant or the victim to say, this is the reality of the investigation, that we could spend 300 hours trying to investigate it, and we're not going to get anything from it. So we educate. I think the best thing to do for everybody is to educate on preventing fraud, because unfortunately the prosecutional and investigational side is very challenging. So I rather see having the education as a forefront and spend our time trying to educate the citizens, especially the senior citizens, to be better aware and how to manage their finances and not become victimized versus spending those resources into the investigations and probably not see a good turn on our value or money.
Right. Well, I've been fortunate that the bank, once I made a concern with the bank, they were able to disperse my funds back into my account because it was taken without my consent. So I'm glad that there's good people out there like yourselves investigating, and it's too bad that we got those guys that don't want to work too hard to get the money. So with that, was there any other question? Councillor Bosch?
Thank you, Mr. King, for coming. Are you seeing any trends from what we were dealing with is COVID in particular, like domestic calls or calls to service? Is that changing at all now that things have somewhat opened up as far as people being out of their homes instead of inside their homes?
Through the chair, I have noticed, and I brought to stats just in case somebody did question, was we're noticing a very increase in total criminal code investigations. So versus 5,303 this quarter versus last year was 4,441. And I like to provide the stats pre-COVID, which would be 6,058 calls for service. So we're slowly seeing a migration where everybody was under the COVID umbrella. We had a reduced call volume. But now we're coming out of COVID. In my opinion, we're going to be starting to see the increase in calls for service. And I hate to say that the calls for service is in one particular umbrella, either domestics or frauds or whatever portion of the criminal code, but I just see the increase in public engagement, community total criminal code complaints are on the rise to meet our pre-pandemic numbers.
Okay. I guess my question is, I understand fraud, not a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's a crime. But the increase in domestic abuse and such during COVID, was a significant concern for many organizations in the community. And that is the trend that I was more concerned about. Public awareness for fraud and such is, we can hopefully learn. But in that particular case, I'm just curious where we're going to land on that.
Well, as a result of the increase in domestic violence, we have created our own specialized investigative unit that is targeting high-risk domestic violence and targeting sexual-based complaints. So as a result of the noticeable increase in calls for service under that umbrella, we have formed a specialized investigative group to address it proactively. I should say reactively, but we have our victim services unit who do proactive engagement with our clients to prevent re-victimization and to try to address it initially being victimized and through the proper investigation and support through a dedicated unit, and then through our victim services to prevent the re-victimization. So yes, we have seen an increase, but I think we have also noticed that we are proactively engaging them at a higher level and a better quality of investigation coming as a result of this dedicated unit.
I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Kevin O'Toole. Actually, I'm just going to make a comment because I did have a question. It was specifically about the specialized investigation unit set up for domestic violence that just pretty much went full-time here over the last little bit, didn't it? In May, April?
Through the chair, yes, it has gone full-time, and we actually increased the complement to a second NCO and another constable. So it's two corporals and 6 investigators.
Yeah, so my comments are simply as thank you to the RCMP and to the Alberta RCMP for recognizing something that I think most of Grande Prairie isn't proud of, that we have a higher instance of domestic violence happening inside of our houses. I know this started out as a pilot project back in 2020, but you said reactive, proactive. I look forward to it being proactive going forward, and now that you have the manpower to investigate and to seek out those crimes and to find resolutions to them, I think it'll make our community and our households a lot safer. So thank you very much for recognizing that here in the community, and I look forward to seeing those domestic violence stats go down in the future with successful investigations.
I share your optimism.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Wendy Bosch, would you like to ask one more question?
Yes, I would. I just think this needs to be said publicly. In with what's recently happening in other communities, other municipalities, especially in particular downtown cores, I have to commend the RCMP and the enforcement services, mobile outreach team, and other organizations of how well this city is doing. It needs to be said out loud. I think we need to brag about these organizations that are helping us out, because we can clearly see what happens when things go awry and get out of control. So I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Well said. All right. With that, thank you very much for being here today, and looking forward to seeing you in person again soon.
Thank you very much.
We have no correspondence. We have no other business. We have no bylaw policy review. We have an outstanding items list. And we'll get that. Can we do an outstanding items list update? Anything changes?
Thank you, through the chair. We remain on target for the 2 indicated on the list. Thank you.
And the new one will be put on later. Okay, so I want to apologize to everybody for cutting everybody a little bit short today. But we've got a meeting that was called by one of the ministers, and he tells us what time to be on the phone. So thank you for your patience, thank you for your time, and thank you for your reports. And with that, I adjourn. Oh yeah, we got a motion. Outstanding items listed. We don't need to make a motion for that. Yes, we do. Oh, yeah, we do. Okay, let's go.
I'm happy to move that we accept it.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much, everybody, for being here today.
We'll take a 5-minute break, and we're going.